Hello, good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our Level 2 online museum management training implemented by Museo Kordilyera with support from the Commission on Higher Education. I'm Ikin Salvador Amores, and welcome to day 2 of the webinar. Yesterday, we had a very good discussion on how to write your concept papers and museum proposals for funding, no? Application for funding. And we reiterated that it is important to craft a very good and clear proposal in order to get support, no, from internal or external funders for your museum projects. So today we will discuss, we have two highly esteemed speakers for this webinar. We have Mr. Dannie Alvarez from the Yuchenko Museum and Ms. Cecile Gelicame from the Museo de la Salle. Before we continue, I just would like to reiterate that there will be requirements or exercises for the webinars for our shortlisted participants for this level 2 training. So let me just share my slide. So for level 1, we discussed yesterday that all the participants should submit their draft of their concept paper for establishing museums. And for those who have existing museums already, you can send us your draft of proposal for any project that are related to your museum. And the submissions will be around first week of April. Which I reiterated that this will be proposals that can be used for your museum projects later on with assistance from Museo Kordilyera and the Commission on Higher Education. So this means we can assist you with crafting your proposals or in any way through the form of technical assistance related to your submissions. In addition, for today's webinar, we discussed yesterday about the organizational structure, which gives you the hierarchy of roles and functions, no, of your museum. So the requirement after this webinar is for you to set up your own organizational structure. We wanted to know what is the current setup and how you want to propose your organizational structure based on these webinars. No? So the requirement will be a submission of 2 diagrams. One is existing or your current structure, and the other one is your proposed organizational structure based on the learnings from these 2 sessions of the webinar. So all of this, exercises 1 and 2, shall be submitted first week of April. We will give you the deadlines and details for this, and you can send this through our email. All of these submissions will be given to our consultants, our museum consultants in level 3 of the technical assistance program. So this is just a gentle reminder. So now let's proceed to our first session. So we are very pleased to have with us Mr. Dannie Alvarez from the Yuchenko Museum, who will share with us a webinar, a presentation on the museum management. So Mr. Dannie Alvarez is currently the president of the Alliance of Greater Manila Area Museums, otherwise known as the AGMAM. It is the regional association of NCR museums in Manila. He is also the museum administrator of the Yuchenko Museum. He served 2 terms as member of the Executive Committee of the Subcommission on Cultural Heritage, or SCH, and as head of the National Committee on Museums, NCOM, of the National Commission on Culture and the Arts. He is the founding president of the Philippine Associations of Museums Incorporated, or PAMI, in 1987. He is also the trustee of the Promoting Agency for the Arts Foundation, or PAAFI, and at the Ben Cub Art Foundation. Mr. Alvarez worked in several museums in various capacities as curator, administrator, consultant, such as the Metropolitan Museum and the Ayala Museum, and also as a museum consultant for various museums in the Philippines. He generously assisted the setup and reinvigorations of different museums all over the country, including the Museo Iloilo in Iloilo City, National Arts Botong Francisco Studio Museum in Angono, Rizal, Museo Kordilyera in Baguio City, the Nueva Vizcaya People's Museum and Library in Bayambong in Nueva Vizcaya, and Museo Isorog in Goa, Camarines Sur, to name a few. Some of the exhibitions he has curated were of our national artists, Jose Hoya, Napoleon Abueva, and Benedicto Cabrera, or BenCab. Aside from his extensive museum practice, he has also worked in advertising, public relations, event management, and book production. So without further ado, we thank Sir Dannie Alvarez for joining us this morning, who will talk about museum administration.
A pleasant good morning to everyone. It's nice to be with you again for the second wave of informative discussions regarding establishment of museums by universities. Today's topic, will be an extension on the first wave of basic museum management, which I presented some time back. So today, we will dwell more closely on the responsibilities, of our museum officers and also our university officers in managing museums. Let's first start with the basic definition of what is museum management. And we will have to make sure that we are aligned with how internationally museum management is defined. It is basically defined now the action of ensuring the running of the museum's administrative business, and more generally, all the activities attached to the specific fields of museum work, like preservation, research, and communication. The major tasks, that we are looking at, in terms of museum work, will be divided into two general sections: the curatorial scope and the administrative scope. By and large, this workshop, has been defining, the detailed operational requirements of museum under the umbrella of the curatorial department. And now we are looking at what is going to be a support unit, or tasks, so that all of these curatorial responsibilities and tasks are done properly and adequately. So for curatorial scope, which we are now more or less aware of, will be the exhibition, research, preservation, education, communication, and community relations. And these are now both in the realm of the actual and the virtual. For the administrative scope, we need to ensure that the operation and efficient running of the museum's administrative business and more generally all other concerns. What we propose is the moment there is already a plan to put together a university museum is to make sure that there will be a unit composed of at least 5 officers of the university who will form part of the board of the museum. because the board will be the one that will steer the ship towards to how they want the museum to be, not only as an extension of their educational uh, responsibility, but also looking at how we can enhance community relations in general. First and foremost, before anything else, we should be very clear with our mission and vision. What is the actual role of the museum and how are going to be effectively enhance the role of the teacher, the student, and the community in general. Also, we have to be very clear as to the budget, where is it lodged, and what are the support financial requirements that we might encounter, and we'll need a plan for additional funding. What is the more important role of the museum management team will be to come up with a very clear um, work plan, in terms of acquisition and donation policy. And of course, we should also have a very clear procedure for loans. That means either we borrow or we lend some specific objects, or materials to some other universities or museum entity. Also very important would be the security and evacuation policy. Looking at the experience that we have had for the past few years, that there are already these very clear uh, issues, when we had the eruption of volcano, earthquakes, flooding, and all of these things. It looks like that this is something that will go on, for the years to come, and as such, we should be very, very clear on what and how are we supposed to confront the issue of museum security and put together a very clear-cut evacuation policy. The more important thing also that the museum board will have to look at is building maintenance, because as we are very well aware of, objects require, museum objects require uh, very clear uh, mandate of museums to look at how the museums should preserve these objects and archival materials. And this is, of course, looking at how well maintained the museum building should be. And of course, the museum board would also be responsible on the curatorial programs that it will implement for the coming years that they are uh, sitting as a board. And normally, all of these are done through a quarterly formal meeting of the board with its curatorial head. Then it might be the curator or the director, so that you will already more or less know what are the projects, both exhibitions and educations, and shall we say community relations programs, the museum had proposed and wished to implement. So again, also looking at the situational framework, uh, there should be more or less personnel policy. There should be a clear direction as to how we are going to appoint your director or the other associate curators. You should also come up with a policy on how to engage OJTs, on the job trainees, and of course volunteers, which we are sure are a lot, especially those who are retired professors or senior citizens, and if they wish to be part of the volunteer brigade, of your museum. We should always look at, first and foremost, how aligned is our museum program with the overarching university objectives. Looking at it, because this is also a teaching entity within the university, because this is again something that can be a clinic or a studio by which faculties and students can use, uh, towards informing uh, the visitors, be it internal or external, in using the museum for for not only in terms of exhibitions, but looking at it from the point of view of additional information that objects and exhibits can give, no? The community as well as the internal publics of the university. When we look at the funds, of the museum, of course, it, we are already aware that it is not going to be easy to put together uh, important exhibits because it entails a lot of costs. As such, prior to any operational programming, there should be some kind of a decision on how much are we going to use in terms of budget for an annual exhibition program. The board should always agree that do you have two major exhibits in a year or ideally four exhibits in a year. Therefore, you will know how much you need, to put this all together. Supposedly, it is something that is going to be challenging as well. One of the more important thing, of course, that the board would look at would be specimen acquisition. Uh, Dependent on your mission vision, what are the specimens that you need to acquire so that you'll be able to be aligned, with what you are there for. Because normally, if there's a museum that is set up, the automatic reflex action or decision of some of the people in the community will be, I will donate something. Oh, I have something, so can I donate? This is where the problem arises, wherein some of the items doesn't necessarily uh, can be part, of uh, your collections, and this is where the sensitive component. How do we now turn away some of these donations which are not totally going to be relevant to our mission vision? This is where you are looking at. You do not want to be the bodega, of all of these things that some of the community members would just say, it's old, we don't need it. Let's give it to the museum. This is why an acquisition program and a very clear uh, uh, direction on what kind of museum you are going to set up should be shared with your community. Again, we should be able to uh, do that if there is a policy that is already in place, right? And there will be more or less indication of duplicate objects, especially if there are donations that come by. And therefore, looking at it, that will be a very good opportunity for you to lend out some of uh, these objects to another museum nearby. And also, because of this kind of arrangement, you can also borrow some of the objects, and which would be perhaps very useful in the exhibitions that you are planning, right? More importantly, there should be some kind of security policy that the museum should be able to craft and put together. Security in terms of day-to-day security, crowd control, objects are secure, and there should the basic of security procedures, should be augmented with what we call the emergency response and evacuation plan. Should things happen, what will be the first step that the security uh, staff and of course the curatorial staff will have to look at, right? There should be a clear indication of evacuation plan, looking at which objects need to be safely tucked in and who are the security uh, persons, not necessarily the security guard, right? But there should be someone which will be assigned to be the security person for a specific object, so that when something happens, he knows already what to do and how are they going to secure this and tuck them away during any kind of an emergency situation, right? And for the building in general, the museum management should always be very much aware that there should be regular pest control program, and temperature and lighting and general housekeeping are in order, right? And of course, as I said, ideally, a museum can have quarterly programs, both in education and in exhibition and community relations. This way, you will know that it is not a static uh, entity, that the moment you set it up, there are no more activities that community will expect. Anything that you do can always have a collateral activity in terms of lectures, programs, and among others. No? And of course, and looking at video and the virtual component of any program is now being looked at, especially right now when we had this pandemic, right? Therefore, all of this now will have to be evolved and put together so that top of mind of people when you inaugurate the museum, that there will be a follow through of more programs, you know, that they can avail of. So visitation, both virtually or actual, is continuous. Again, as I said, we should be very, very clear that appointments, of our personnel is something that you need to put together clearly. There should be some kind of a term of reference that you have to put together per appointee, right? So that they know exactly what they're supposed to do and do what they are supposed to be responsible for. At this day and age, it looks like there's the idea of a specific function and a specific role is not something that is practical in the Filipino setup. Simply because number one, we cannot have so many people, with a specific issue to attend to. We are always looking at an opportunity of multitasking, especially right now that most of the museum workshops are online. Therefore, anybody can sit in and understand what are the different tasks involved in running a museum. And from then on, we will know that it is best to have some people in your unit that will be able to perform an additional task other than what they are good at, right? Of course, school universities has this on-the-job training program, and the on-the-job training program is something that is interesting to set up simply because this is also an eye-opener for students when they want to look at museum work as a possible direction they want to do after college, right? That's why exposing them to museum work and making sure that they come to understand and eventually love the the work wherein you will get people to work uh, more permanently in the museum in museums. Volunteers are always welcome simply because they are the keepers of memory, especially the retired people, who would want to spend 3 hours in a museum and just make sure that they become a very good resource of information, and we can gather this and we can put them together, and this can be useful in putting together our exhibition and curatorial narratives. And by and large, it also encourages that feeling of being part, of a museum. And this is exactly what we wanted to always remind our visitors that they are part and parcel of the historical component of the museum with the different anecdotes, that you can just record and put together, and hopefully that can be a useful material, for your exhibition and these other museum programs that you want to plan. Therefore, looking at it, you should already have now more or less some kind of a roadmap. What is the responsibility of the museum board and what is the responsibility of the curatorial office? And by and large, this is just a summary of what I have just explained, right? And if you have all of this in your checklist, the menu of things to do and to plan for, then I think you are in the right direction. You should always look at fundraising as a big task, you know, because this is always co-shared by the Museum Curatorial Office and the Museum Board. Because you should always look at that fundraising and budget appropriation is also tied up with another component of what are the available grants for museums and museum personnel, which the Museum Curatorial Office are aware of. And looking at it, you should always make sure that they are attendant to uh, any project proposal. What are the sources of possible sources of funds when you put together an exhibit or a museum program? Uh, in short, that is the only time that the museum board can more or less write the proponent or or give their go signal for the museum curatorial office to apply for these specific grants that are available. No? So by and large, looking at it, it is a continuous relationship between the museum board and the museum curatorial office, simply because this is where things can just evolve very, very nicely because the relationship is very dynamic. And it's only here that the university is represented by the museum board in any major projects that the museum would like to initiate and put together. And one thing that perhaps we need to look at is, of course, always the issue is that what are these grants? How do we apply for them, right? And this is where we need to look at a better way of trying to understand how the grant process is applied, you know, when we put together an exhibition and a museum programs. So I will discuss more or less or give you a list, a shopping list of available grants and how you can apply for them. What are the available museum grants nationally? Of course, you all are aware of that there is the National uh, Commission for Culture and the Arts, and under it is the National Subcommission on Cultural Heritage, by which the museums are lodged. You know? And you all know that there are annual grants available, and these annual grants are announced by the NCCA, and the different areas of museum work are listed there and how much they are available for application. Please take note that the annual grants have a cycle. It's annual. And the deadline for submission of proposals is normally September 30 for the following year, right? And these are competitive grants. And looking at it, you might be able to apply and just make sure that you are, uh, shall we say, ready, you know, with certain required documentation, right? Because as a government entity, it must have it must have some kind of a document that will tell others that you are a legitimate organization and your paperwork is updated, and all of these are part and parcel of the call for grants. It's a pamphlet, and all of the requirements are listed there. Make sure that you are properly updated when it comes to your government documentation. And aside from the annual grants, which require a certain, shall we say, paperwork, right? There is also what we call the Technical Assistance Program of the NCCA, wherein any museum or museum organization for that matter can apply for, and this is more or less in small scale, but not as big as the in terms of monetary value as the annual grants. However, you are able to take advantage of the Speakers Bureau of the NCCA if you need to come up with a basic uh, learning tools, on how to operate a museum. And the supposedly museum expert can visit you and your museum and guide your personnel on how to put together certain solutions to the issues in your museum, right? And on the private sector side, there is what you call the Museum Foundation of the Philippines, the MFPI, which also provide grants for publications and for general assembly meetings of regional and national organization of museums. And the more important thing, which these two organizations, NCCA and Museum Foundation of the Philippines, will be of help if if your museum is an active member of the regional association of museums in your area. You will know that this association supposedly helps in the dissemination of information about activities and about available partnerships, and this should cascade to you. That's why you should make sure that try to find out how that what are these museum organizations. Normally, these are regional associations. No? I'm talking about the Regional Association of Museums, and inquire and make sure that you are an active member of these associations. No? And in the diplomatic um, sphere, uh, very active doing projects in the Philippines are the British Council, the Japan Foundation, and the Goethe Institute. Anything that you would need in terms of speakers bureau, also lectures and museum talks, and and the new realm of creative industries. Uh, these three organizations are available for consultations and even provide you with speakers, lectures, and people who can demonstrate certain processes, no? and uh, and not only that, they also give opportunity of cross-regional interaction, specifically here in Asia. And looking at it, it is going to be a very important entity, conduit, because you will also know uh, what are the other museum activities that are happening specifically in the ASEAN region. If you recall, in my list of people of entities that will appreciate your museum, we have to know that it's no longer something that is very linear. When I say linear, exhibit, museum building, and objects. There are more important things that we need to look at in terms of how object exhibitions and programs impact on the psyche of the community. Because in today's society, more and more people start to pursue spiritual satisfaction instead of substantial contentment, which raised a higher demand for museums. Remember, it's a museum is always an experience. When you go through an exhibition, it gives you another layer of understanding using the museum object and the museum gallery and space for you to appreciate the heritage and cultural content of the exhibit. That's why, besides the basic functions such as collections, conservation, research, and display, education and cultural inheritance in museums are growing more and more attention from the public. Relevance is always something that is the key word in putting together uh, an exhibit. Something that you can immediately relate to, or some kind of an issue that you're interested in, but you do not have enough material which you can use to understand that situation. And looking at that, uh, the museum should be able to put together very good exhibition and educational program narratives. No? And that is also the basic direction that the International Council of Museums had put together. Since early on, they're already looking at what experiential component do we share with our publics that are more memorable, which they can bring home, which they can relate to, and 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 give you more or less personal pride and perhaps understanding the growth and direction of your community, and why is your community more or less different from the other communities, right? It's the pride of place, which is also part of what you call the bigger picture of cultural tourism. And it's always the museum that can always be the main player of this challenging continuing conversation between the local community, the visitor, the student, and the teacher. Well, looking at it, the very issue of sustainability is the thing that we have to make sure is properly mapped out. Because anything that what a university should always look at is that when you put together something, is it going to be sustainable in different levels? Not only in terms of the economic sustainability, but also the social sustainability and the environmental sustainability. Lo and behold, this is something that perhaps that differentiates a university museum from other museums, because these are the real concerns which the universities are confronted with, right? And looking at it, uh, how do we now you look at uh, making sure that you are viable? There should be already this kind of checklist or a roadmap by which you will be looking at in terms of putting together your project. For example, economic sustainability, right, addresses heritage exposure, and of course, under the umbrella of the cultural tourism project of the national government, right, is something that already has a push and support under the Department of Tourism. Therefore, as a museum, what you ought to do is come up with museums that are attractive and there is a certain welcoming atmosphere to the public. Then, of course, we should always look at financial resources, which, of course, now has become a little bit of a challenge because of the reality of the pandemic. However, if you look at it, there are other things that you can do that's not going to require too much of financial dole outs from your sponsors. And you should always make sure that you're able to put together the these projects and ensure that you are always using these resources efficiently, right? Because you cannot do anything without, of course, the financial component of any activity, right? That's why it is always a challenge that you should always measure your performance and how effective you were in every project that you put together. And looking at it, uh, sustainability now is something that is more attractive as an option for people to support you, right? And making sure that the commitment, you know, of coming up with the very essence of museum work, which is cultural sustainability, is the heart of all of this, right? And your museum is tested because it is the thing that measures how successful the heritage exposure of your publics, the student, the faculty members, the employees of the university, as well as your immediate community. The the very existence, of an effective social media base has been proven to be a good ally of museums because you're able to communicate effectively and timely to the different age brackets of your community. Looking at it, uh, what is important is that universities have always had a very good base of alumni who are either now abroad or in Manila or or happily doing some things as successful entrepreneurs or successful government officials or what have you. And a very effective partnership with the alumni office of your university is always a good opportunity for museums to connect with the alumni community because they are the very ones who would like to, support this kind of projects, especially if it is about collections, cultural, the collections of memories, right? And and how they are now successful, perhaps well, businessmen or government officers, and looking back and looking at how effective the university education they've had, and it is something that is always more or less an attractive option for them to contribute their resources partially to whatever the museum activities uh, are there, for them to be more or less available. And looking at that, all of this exercise that we've been putting together looks at uh, the very essence. What is the cultural sustainability that we need to take on as one of the major tasks of museums and museum personnel. So, looking at the role of the university and how education cascades to different levels of audiences, priority students, and the faculty, uh, it gives you another platform by which you become more analytical, you become more practical, and you become more discernful, and you, you use the cultural resources of your community and to turn around certain attitudes, perhaps, or even limited knowledge. And the museum can always expand this in a more interesting and more dynamic way. And that becomes the, the spine of museum, wherein there is always that backup of people who are who are very proud of their local history and would always point at your museum as a possible inspiration for others. So that being said, that is the framework of how the management component of a museum should be looked at. And if you are able to map this out completely, then you will be able to now go to the next step, which is how do you now uh, make sure that administratively, uh, how do you now operate a museum? So, from the macro point of view of management, we go to the next phase is how do we now look at the very way of putting together an effective um, administrative platform for you to make sure that your museums become sustainable, become attractive, become the place of memories for your communities. So that being said, I hope we'll be able to uh, look at it from the two components of what the management sector would be and what would be the administrative sector would be, and then the curatorial component of how to put things together and make very good, interesting, and powerful exhibitions and museum programs. That being said, thank you very much, and hoping that you will be able to now look at a better plan, for your museum.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Danny, for that very informative presentation on museum management. This is a follow through from the level one webinar on museum management session last time with Sir Danny. So if you have questions to ask, you can send us now. So we have a live Q&A with Sir Danny. Sir Danny, are you there? All right. Hello, Sir Danny.
Yes, hi. Hi. Hello, everybody.
Yeah. So the questions are pouring in. I would like to ask you a question. What are the major obstacles to really achieve this sustainability programs for the museum? Like you mentioned about the economic, cultural, and other related programs now for the museum. Because we visited other museums as well, and they have problems, no? So we wanted to address the root of this issue for many of our colleagues from HEI museums.
Yes. As I had mentioned, earlier, that perhaps we forgot to more or less apprise, our museum board as to the extent of the work, of a museum, especially when it involving community relations, right? And we need all the support. That means the core of the problem would be support. And an effective museum board who will understand the process, who will understand your goals, is your effective partner. And sometimes, us also had been there, we forgot when we put together something, we forgot to more or less interface, at least one or two of our museum board into the process, of putting together museum projects. Uh, we cannot limit their participation only for approval of budget. They should have a buy-in terms of the value, of what we are supposed to put together, for our museum. And looking at it, if there is that effective support, then things are far more easier to implement. And that being said, the continuous conversation, between the board and the curatorial head, he be the director or the curator, is I think something that we should start doing. Uh, Let them. They should have a buy-in into this project. And what is it for the university? It's always the issue, right? No, because you're using university funds, and how relevant would be any project that they will have to approve later. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your
Um,
question.
yes po. Some of the museums that we visited, they pointed out that some of them say that museums are irrelevant in the university setting. So we have been trying to persuade many of our colleagues in HEI museums that museums are important. So what is your thoughts about so-called irrelevance of museums in the university, and as such they have a difficulty in securing funds,
Yeah,
securing even staff to work in the museum.
yeah.
What is thinking about this, and what good advice can you give to our participants who are leading the university museums in their locale?
Yes, that's a very good question. No? Number one, it is a non-traditional, uh, shall we say, process by which some of the faculty members or even the different departments cannot appreciate, simply because there are no supposedly link up to what they feel would be the actual role of of a university. For example, if it is an agricultural museum, I mean an agricultural state university, and sometimes they will frown, why a museum when we are highly technical, we are highly scientific. But there are other layers, which are the ethnographic component of agriculture. And that being said, uh, it should be something that should be explained that way, that number one, it is absolutely relevant. Number two, it's also a good way of enhancing knowledge, of a specific, be it ethnographic or purely agriculturally based issues, and it takes quite a while for you to be able to do that if the process is reversed. Again, when I say the process is reversed, is that you bring to the meeting already something that is complete in terms of a concept. I think evolvement of the concept, again, dapat merong participation kahit isa o dalawa dun sa board, right? So they will see how they can use the museum as an extension of the classroom. Because number one, your exhibits rely on research. Number two, it must be something that is relevant in terms of your community, not only your community, physical community as a geographic, but community of experts, community of resource people, right? There are several layers of this aggregation of people, and the university is always the ideal setup, right? Understanding this uh, perhaps will give you a better sense on how to strategically approach certain resistances, on
Thank
why
you, sir.
and how relevant museum is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question from the YouTube from our audience there. The question is, we they said that they don't have a museum board. No, so this is about the hierarchy, and the people behind the museum. So he said that they don't have a museum board. Is the board a necessity? What do we lose and what do we gain for not having a board in the museum? So this is a different setup. So they have
Yeah.
a museum, but they don't have a museum board. So is it still necessary or a necessity to have one?
Well, perhaps
That's the question.
yes. Sometimes you will not realize, that there should be someone that will watch your back, especially because right now the trust is the university museum is also engaging its local community. Therefore, you have already that aspect of local culture, right? And looking at it, uh, when things become a little bit, uh, uh, shall we say, sensitive, no, you need the backing of the university to be able to explain why you had put together this kind of exhibit, right? And you and this protects you, no? And because you are reporting into an organization, which is a university, right? Uh, Perhaps I'm just loosely using the word board, right? But there should be at least a committee, no? If you have a heritage and cultural section, no, that will be able to address certain sensitive issues when they come by, right? And that's why we said some of the museums become frustrated when there is nobody or an entity that backs them up, right? Especially now that museums, have expanded its role. You just don't talk about objects, no, and historical snippets, no. You also are now involved into advocacy. More often than not, that is the new trend of museum work. That you should really engage yourself and make sure that you are part and parcel of a community advocacy, right? That is the only way to really again draw people into the reality that museum as a forum is a very important entity of a university. Discourse is
Yeah.
always the primary concern of a university.
Okay, thank you, Sir Danny. In relation to the question on museum board, we have a comment and a question.
Yeah.
The first is a comment from Vesper Sheras. The question is it wise to have the university president to be the director of the board? And we have a comment from Professor Cecile Gelicame, and she said that in the case of the Museo de la Salle, they have a separate board apart from that of the university. So the university president sits as the president of the museum board. So, what do you think about the question on Vesper Diaz? Is it okay to have the university president to sit as the director of the board, for that matter?
Well, it all depends also, no, if the president is interested, right? That is something that you have to really find out, no? Is his heart uh, into a museum, right?
Yeah.
And how effective will he be as a as the president of the museum board? Remember also, the president is the face of the university in the community, not only in the community of the province or the city. It's also the community of of universities, right? And looking at this, if mounting very important exhibits, especially if you will engage yourself to certain loans, right? And you will have to borrow from a national government some important objects such as maps or old pictures or whatever. The best uh, ranking, would be perhaps a letter coming from the president of the university, who is also the sitting president of the museum board. Therefore, it facilitates certain things. It gives you that credibility that this is something that the project is a university uh, wide project. Yeah. It facilitates certain networking requirements, that you might want to have, when you engage yourself with bigger initiatives such as museum summit or a conference, and borrowing certain specimens, or even inviting uh, uh, important speakers to your uh, seminars or to your workshops.
Okay, thank you, Sir Danny. Another related question from an anonymous attendee regarding the museum board. So he says here, thank you for the informative talk, Sir Danny. So for the museums that are on the establishment phase, who
Yes.
should select the board members? Is it a good idea to include people not affiliated in the university, for instance, the spouse of the president?
Well, there is always such a thing as a safety net, correct? But ideally, you would have to have someone within the university system. Now, if there is somebody who is there because of certain relationships, not only in terms of backup, if they have very good networking facilities, right? You could always have what you call an alternative for these people, and they can be honorary members, right?
Yes.
And not necessarily the working board, because the working board is kind of tedious. Remember, I am suggesting quarterly meetings. I'm suggesting a review of processes, and of course, most of you who are from the state universities, remember, you have a very peculiar procurement process in the government setup. That's why involving the administrative component of the university into the board will always facilitate certain things that are not normally what you call uh, procedural, right? When you procure certain groups, no, to put together your exhibit, or to even supply you with certain things that unfortunately is not compatible with the traditional procurement process, no, of shall we say office supplies, no. That's why early on, if they are a part and parcel of the board, there will be an understanding on how this can be efficiently implemented.
Okay. So we have more questions here, Sir Danny, for um, your session. So there's a question about another on private museums and LGU museums. What
Yes.
is the suggested structure for LGU museums? This in light with LGUs coming up with their own local museums. Of course, we discussed about the university setup. What about in LGU
Okay.
museums?
Uh, we found out early on, no, that sometimes it is so disappointing that a museum is associated with whoever sits, no, in as head of the LGU, considering that therefore when we further investigate, we find out that the museum is not formally put together as an office. It becomes a project. That is the more disappointing part, no, because if it is only a project, therefore it has there is shall we say, distinctive time element wherein they can operate, perhaps during the term of the sitting mayor or governor. What is important is that Department of their tourism office, no? Which all of the LGUs have, should be able to put together a formal office, an existing formal office, and that is a museum. with at least one personnel, which is a curator. That being said, you are protected. You can go on and put together your projects. The sangguniang panluluwigan or the city council, etc., can have project appropriation for you. Then you become a legitimate unit in the university. That is very important. I think one of the frustrations, no, that some of our colleagues, no, had shared with us is that after the election, they do not know if they are still going to exist or not. That is a very, very sad situation because it is not. It should not be the case, right? If you have if you have a city library, right? Why can't you have a city museum? So these are all something that you have to more or less enlighten your, because who sits as the head of the sanggunian? It's always the vice mayor, the vice governor, right? It is not the mayor or the or the governor that sits in the sanggunian, because a law, no, a simple law is something that you need for you to operate and for you to exist. So that is the number one key, because eventually uh, there is one employee and the others are by appointments, right? If there is problem with regards to budgets, right?
Okay. There's a follow-up, Sir Danny, from Dr. Liza Tamargo. She's the from IFSU Museum. So
Yep.
if the museum is under the Vice President for Academic Affairs, maybe the VPAA can be the head of the board. Yes, we do that in Museo Kordilyera too. If not, if not the VPAA, who will then be the next best director of the board, museum board?
Well, actually, this is a case-to-case basis, right? Uh, it just popped up, no? That the most ideal situation, perhaps, is if the president is more than willing, no, to be part and parcel of this. But again, a very high senior officer, right, in the BP level, is something that perhaps lends the assurance, no, that the museum is formally being managed and organized, depending on the hierarchy, no, of 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 uh, of personnel. I mean officers, no, of your university. There is no rigid rule regarding this, because there are certain times wherein you'll be surprised someone who sits not as a vice president or a vice chancellor might have a better network than the chancellor or the
Mhm.
vice chancellor, as long as the chancellor agrees that he can be or she can be the better head of a museum board. And ideally, actually, we are not talking of the board member, the board head, no? Ideally, the sitting curator or director should be part and parcel of that board. that that will make sure that there is efficiency in terms of planning, you know, and executing certain projects. Uh, that is the ideal situation, because that is by appointee only, right? And I think even the museum board, uh, their term of office should be dictated. Na how long can they sit, and how, and after that will there be a re-election, right? And can you only sit once, or can you be re-elected? Those are the things that the board will have to look at.
Okay. So we have more questions, Sir Danny. But some of them we can probably answer online. So may I just take in two last questions before we proceed to Cecile's talk.
Yes,
So
please.
one is, given that this second stage of training needs us to submit a proposal or concept paper, would it be feasible to create a proposal without a museum board? And how would this affect the establishment of the museum?
Okay. Looking at that, which is a very good question because you're talking about what is reality, no, in your environment. Now, when you put together something, and you are wanting to do this, you always preclude who will approve this, right? Therefore, while the board is non-existent, what you are supposed to put together is something that will have to get a certain approval, right? An approval perhaps by the president, right? But again, the president will look at bottom line. How about the execute the different aspects of museum work when you put together this exhibit or this museum programs, right? Then you always have that kind of mindset that this has to be approved. Literally, also, if you do not have that board and you have this project and you want to propose this to a possible uh, patron who will support you financially, therefore, there should be someone who will approve it. And the approving body can always be, uh, uh, lodged, as a person of authority. Therefore, it looks like he is the museum board. Meaning, the approval process of any activity, should always take that into consideration, right? Somebody has to approve your
Uh,
project. You know.
yeah. My answer to that question is if you don't have a museum board and the training or the project itself is requiring you to submit a concept paper or a
Yeah,
proposal,
yeah.
you can actually draft a proposal to create your museum board. No, why
Oo.
the need to have that kind of setup,
No,
or why the need to have a project related to your museum establishment? No, uh, the reason why we are requiring our participants to have a concept paper is to have this kind of exercise
mm-mm.
and go into the nitty gritty of the process itself of creating a proposal or a concept paper. We had the webinar yesterday on this topic, and this is connected to Sir Danny's talk. No? In order for you to propel or to move on with projects, you need at least this concept paper of you want what you want to do for your museum.
Yeah,
Because, like I said, this will be the basis for your university officials to give you a grant, to consider your requests, to give you funding, or etc. No, so the concept paper is the core document, no, in moving forward for establishing or conceptualizing your museum. So
yes.
even without a museum board, if there are individuals that are passionate about this museum work, that it has to be there, it should exist, it should continue, then you have to craft a good concept paper for consideration.
Yes, I totally
Okay.
agree. I totally agree. There's also one aspect of perhaps considering a museum board because we're just looking at the relationship between the public and the museum. We also have to consider the relationship within the university community, di ba? The buy-in of the project, you cannot get to 100% perhaps acceptance of other departments, in your university. It's something that we need to also look at. How do you neutralize this problem so that you don't get agitated, that you have a very good program and somebody is shooting, you know, from the hip and saying your project is no good.
Yeah. And Sir Danny, last two questions from Alex de los Santos. I think this is a question on collections policy, but anyway, I'll ask it anyway.
Yep.
So from Alex de los Santos, what are the main considerations or requirements for loaning and lending artifacts? For instance, they want to borrow a replica of the Manunggul jar from the National Museum. Assuming it is possible, what are the mechanics for this?
Well, I do understand that that is allowable because I have gone to other museums wherein we have the replica, of the Manunggul jar, and that is the setup. And all you have to do is write the director of the museum, uh, Director Jeremy Barnes, and lodge a request, right? And I don't think it will be a problem for them. I'm sure they're more than willing, no? Especially you're a university museum. I hope I
Okay.
answered your question.
Yeah. I can lend you a replica, a small one. Stud collections. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So that ends our question. There are more questions, Sir Danny. We will just forward it to you.
Yes,
So
yes,
may I thank you so much for that enlightening talk and also for the Q&A. So may I remind the participants that we might extend for additional 15 minutes, maybe around 12:15, because I don't want to cut the discussion, because from the discussion in the Q&A, we will learn a lot. No?
okay.
So thank you, Sir Danny. We will now proceed with back-to-back lecture presentation with Cecile Galicame. So I will introduce her now. Thank you, Sir Danny. We'll chat later for more queries.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So our second speaker is Professor Cecile Galicame. She's the current director of the Museo de La Salle, one of the university museums at the De La Salle University in the Philippines. She is a graduate of the University of the Philippines Manila's BA Philippine Arts program. She holds a master's degree in teaching social sciences at De La Salle University. Her thesis is centered on object-based learning, or OBL, principles to develop lessons that empower history teachers in using museum objects in creating constructivist classrooms that promote active, experiential, and holistic learning. So Cecile has been involved with Museo de la Salle since its inception in 2000, primarily as its education officer. She also worked previously as the outreach and educations officer of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila. She is currently the president of the Southern Luzon Association of Museums, or ESLAM, and was a member of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts National Committee on Museums from 2014 to 2019, where she was appointed vice chair from 2017 to 2019. She's also a member of NCCA's Technical Working Group for Project Busila, or the cultural mapping for LGUs, where she helped develop the framework for the country's cultural mapping toolkit. I think the book is now available from NCCA. And she's actively engaged with local government units across the country for conducting this groundbreaking initiative. So this project assisted LGUs, no, in undertaking their own cultural mapping activities. So we welcome Professor Cecile Galicame. Are you there? Okay.
Hello, good morning. I'm Cecile Gelicame, and thank you, Museo Kordilyera, for this opportunity to be able to share with you about our museum. And this morning, I've been tasked to talk about museum administration. Allow me to do my screen share. So, museum administration is nothing new to many of us, but um, allow me to share with you the experience of Museo de la Salle in the La Salle University, Las Marinas, and how administration is being done there, of course, with the Lasallian tradition as a guide. Let me start this talk by giving an introduction about our museum. Museo de La Salle is a lifestyle museum dedicated to the preservation of tangible material culture of the 19th century Philippines. So this is our building. is located in the 29-hectare campus of the De La Salle University, Las Marinas in Cavite. And we are situated at the plaza of the university. Created in year 2000, Museo de La Salle was established and envisioned by our founder, the then President, Brother Andrew Gonzalez, FSC, to be a space not only for heritage objects, but a landmark cultural institution, a learning space in the LSUD where one can learn about Cavite and the Philippine culture. The thing, however, was when Museo de La Salle started operating as a museum in the year 2000, and we started having visitors and guests, and we started having excursions and field trips. We were the next big thing at that time. So in the campus, Museo de La Salle was like a time portal where people would come and as soon as they enter, they would say, para kami nasa time machine. We were brought back in time. It's like going back to the Spanish colonial period because it was that experience that Museo de La Salle wanted to give to our public. So inside the museum, you will find antique furniture collection. You will also find rooms that are reminiscent of Bahay na Bato of the period. But our museum is a newly built structure, and we're in fact 4 or 5 times larger than typical Bahay na Bato of the period. So we were built purposely to function as a museum. So Museo de La Salle became a repository dedicated to the preservation of certain aspects of material culture. We became a living space. The community loved it. In fact, when I said community, it's the community that would always visit the museum. However, our immediate community, which was the DLSUD campus or the DLSUD student, we felt disconnected with our museum. In fact, many of them felt alienated. Um, why did I say this? Many of our students or some faculty, you would hear them, mahirap dyan pumunta sa museo kasi pang bisita lang yan. And some would even say, pang elitista lang yung museo na yan. Yung mga pumupunta dyan, pang mayayaman lang. Because at that time, we would have events that would be, that would encourage our external visitors and our partners and our stakeholders to be coming to our events fully dressed in Filipiniana. So many of our students felt a disconnect. What was the role of the museum in the campus? Because really, at that time, we were consumed with the role of collecting for the museum, making our collections, completing our collection at the time when we started. So our concern was also on stewardship, collections interested in our care. And the public that we thought were the public outside of the university, which was the paying public, the public who would be giving us the image or the brand that we would like to have for our museum. So it was a struggle between collecting stewardship versus services to the public. So this time, what exactly do we mean by public and who is a public that we should be prioritizing or serving in relation to the mission of the museum? So when we started hearing these comments from the community na, elitista ang museo, ano ba namang silbi niyan, yung mapang history lang naman yan. So we started this program called Kumakatok. Tuloy po kayo sa bahay na bato. This was me, literally, asking myself to be invited by during department meetings to their regular meetings for me to reach out and for me to tell them and engage them on how the museo can be utilized in their classes. So, for instance, I would ask social sciences department, kailan ang meeting nyo? Pwede bang magpa-schedule yung museo so we can give a talk briefly about what the museo is about and what the contents are inside and what classes can be or what courses can best use ng museo for learning. Yung Rizal, pwedeng pumunta, ito yung mga pwedeng maging lesson. Yung art appreciation, ito yung pwedeng maging lesson. Yung history, ito rin yung pwedeng maging lesson. I would go to math department as well. We have collections that have that can tackle lessons on ratio and proportion, on shapes and blah blah blah. I would go to architecture and talk to them that our museum can be a resource for learning on Philippine architecture. I would go to biology department, talk to them that they can also visit the museum and talk about conservation, scientific conservation. It took many years of campaign and advocating and engaging with our community. And it at some point it was very taxing because you did or I all we did was to campaign and campaign and campaign and still didn't get really much results as far as an immediate audience or the DLSUB community was concerned. Of course, we kept on having our excursions, but field trips, come and go yan. Pipila, maraming tao, nagmamadali, ah, magbibigay ka lang ng brief na information kasi kaya nga na nilang makaalis agad, but they're paying. But this isn't the immediate community that we are actually serving. So we had to rethink, why were we established in the first place? Who is our main public and who is our main community that we should be serving? So what exactly does museum administration really, what does it really mean now? Because is it really just, running the museum? But when you say running the museum, what does it entail? Ano bang nakakasakop nito? Actually, it's a multifaceted kind of function because museum administration requires budgets and strategic planning and human resources and facilities management, collections and programming, legal documents, legal and ethical issues, adapting to change and addressing challenges. So these are very huge concepts that we do as museum administrators. So, kung ibabalik sa collecting and storage versus services to the public, paano mo ilalatag yung buong concept of museum administration to a much bigger purpose, to a much bigger idea on why your museum is actually or was actually built. So in our experience, what we did, we had to review and we had to rethink our mission. Kasi parang bakit we disconnect? Bakit kami alienated in the very campus that we belong? Hindi dapat ganun. It should be that the campus should be proud, should be involved, should own the museum. So we had to rethink. So in 2015, we ventured into a strategic planning. It's an administration kind of function. It's planning that entails charting our direction towards a certain future that we would like to determine or that we would like to get to. It was a very slow process. It involved our museum board. It involved several other stakeholders in the campus. We engaged with several other departments, and we also involved with several experts. The good thing about working in the campus is you actually have experts inside to help you out on matters like this. So many of us work in the in higher education institutions, or all of us for that matter. What we don't realize is that the expertise in the campus can really assist the museum in many ways, in all facets pa nga. So expertise on business administration can help put the museum or help the museum chart its direction. Expertise on marketing as well. Expertise on science for conservation. It's a matter of tapping the button and giving them, sparking them with the idea that, hey, we can collaborate. Hey, you can contribute. Hey, we need your help. So with this in mind, we did strat planning. It was slow, but it helped us in determining our position, It also expanded our stakeholders because many people actually got involved and many were enlightened that they too can be part of the museum and can help. We were able to see challenges. Until now, we're seeing issues and challenges, and it's still challenging to address them. But we were able to develop some action plans and strategies in relation to them. So the first thing that we did was, teka lang, ah, where are we going to anchor again the mission of the museum in relation to the bigger mission of the university? Because first and foremost, doon ka dapat mag-anchor, doon ka dapat kumapit kasi you're just one of the institutions established to help achieve a certain goal set by the university. So we had to review the bigger mission of our mother unit or our mother institution, which was the LSUD. And so we discovered or we found this very phrase in the mission of the university. Uh, the, and so we embraced that becoming the arm of the university in realizing its vision to promote a clean sense of history and culture. So from here, allow me to share with you very briefly the process that we did on strat planning and the results thereafter. So a bigger DLSUD mission. So in your case, you may want to review the mission also of your universities. And if you have no museum yet, you may want to address a specific mission of your university and anchor yourself there and thus establish your museum. So that can be a direction that you can set for your when you start the planning. So what we did, we positioned ourselves, we reviewed what we've been doing, made commitment statements, and aligned all of the existing things that we've been doing to these commitment statements, and then align them also with that of university. So we developed this core group to help the museum in the campus. So DCHC is the De La Salle Cultural Heritage Committee. This committee is headed by the museum. We engage several other faculty, several departments, and several experts here. And this committee now are the ones tapped by the museum in helping us craft our direction, in helping us work on our commitments, and in helping us planning the direction or setting the direction for the next years to come, and setting our objectives and goals as well. So all this, the members of the DCHC would be the museum, the library, our community study center. We also have the president's office. We have the budget officers and the other groups here. So very strategic yung move. Every time, we also have the vice chancellors for academics and research representatives. So every time we would have a need or concern, this group convenes and we lay out our cards and we align to the university. So this is what we did. We reviewed the DLSUD mission and that of the Museo de La Salle and then we align them. So the LaSalle information, LaSalle instructions, LaSallian research, LaSallian extension, and LaSallian governance are alignments set by the university when we did the strategic planning around 2015. And we aligned our commitment statements to each of these LaSallian commitments. So we would want that our museum to have something to offer for every type of program or goal that the university had set. So we committed to LaSalle information, to instruction, to research, to LaSallian extension, to governance. So now, since we committed all that to all of this, we had to make our programs and statements, and then reviewing our existing activities, plus putting our dreams there as well. So we put here goals. These are the commitment statements. And from the goals, we started setting our programs. What kind of programs? Programs are long-term. Programs are like titles that you would like to give to specific projects that you will do. So yung program mas malaki, and under the programs, there should be several projects or several activities. So ganun yung lineup niya or yung division niya. So para hindi tayo nakakonfuse. So the programs are the ones setting, or yung programs, these are the ones that you craft to help you achieve your goals. And then under the programs, that's where you create the activities or the projects, which are short-term. Ganon. So your programs can be paulit-ulit. So under the exhibition program, we have blah, blah, blah. So under the research program, we have research on the arts, we have research on literature, ganyan. So, yun yung difference ng program and activities. Of course, alam natin yan lahat. And then, of course, at each, we would identify partners. Either partners who would be assisting us in kind or partners who would be able to help us fund a project or partners, usually external linkages, sa mga ganyan. So, we also did that. So, tuloy-tuloy yun. Because we developed 5 commitment statements, we identified several programs under those commitment statements, and then we aligned activities under the programs, and then identified partners. So we still do this every time we do yearly planning for our museum. So when we did the strat plan, it was for a 5-year plan, because that's what we usually would do. Dapat may time bound yung mga planning natin. So, after we crafted the DCHC or DHCC helped us with this direction, we presented this to the entire university body. Kasi that's what we realized, na we were disconnected and alienated simply because we weren't aggressive enough and active enough to engage everybody in what we do. So what we did, we requested for an audience for a slot, so to present our directions for the community to be able to comment on and to probably embrace or to understand at least or to appreciate. So that it was a long process, but really fulfilling at the same time. So when we presented it, some made comments, parang, oh, that's too big. Ah, that's too small. Ah, pwede pala kami pumasok dyan. Ah, we can collaborate with you. So, dun siya lumaki yung aming strat plan. So, after that, 3 years after, eventually, we changed our mission statement. And we updated our mission statement. We even changed our logo. Kasi our old logo does not anymore represent the mission or the role of the museum. And so, when we updated our mission statement, it became this, a sustainable center that is committed to the safeguarding of Philippine cultural heritage through its education programs. That part of education program is a strength of being in a university, being in a higher education institution. And what sets us apart from, kasi pare-pareho lang halos lahat naman ng museum, we would like to safeguard Philippine cultural heritage, we would like, kung lahat yung cultural heritage part, you would always see that in many cultural institutions. Pero, anong meron sa Museo de la Salle or sa university that would set it distinctly, your mission at least, apart from the others? This education. Kasi education institution tayo. So, yan yung nilagay namin. The strategy. So this is our strategy at the same time. So our leadership aims to develop informed communities that hold a profound regard for nationhood. So kung hihimayin mo yan at isa-strat plan mo, that will be in several statements or several programs leading to the achievement of your mission statement or the realization of your goals. So our aim, as I've said, is to develop informed communities through promoting arts and culture and safeguarding our Filipino heritage, and that profound regard for nationhood, malalim. So, how did we actually do it? Actually, it's not really for me to say na we've done it because we're still working on it. We're still a work in progress. Hindi pa siya tapos. In fact, a lot of it, nagsisimula pa lang na mag-lay ng foundation, and a lot of it have not picked up yet, and then the pandemic came. So imagine 2018 or probably 2017, 2018, nung medyo nalatag ng maayos yung strategic plan for our museum. And then, unti-unti mong nilalatag at nililay yung foundation, and then something like this pandemic happened. And then suddenly you're, oh, teka lang, iba na naman pala. So, but just the same, how we did it slowly, into becoming a more museum that we are now, we just committed to the mission. That's how we did it. So, and that's how it's the same way on how we're continuously doing it, doing our program, and hoping to achieve our goals. We just commit to the mission because this is the Lasallian tradition. We are all mission driven. So we commit to the mission of preserving cultural heritage or safeguarding cultural heritage through education. So what we did, we strengthened our classroom integration. We developed this program called AMUSE, Animation Museum Education. So this time, we recognize the power of our collection of our objects for classroom integration or for education. The thing, however, was not all faculty or not all teachers know how to use them. Totoo naman. Kasi a lot are intimidated. Lalo na tayo, meron tayong rule, oh, bawal lumawak, hands off, huwag kayong umalis sa pila, baka may mabasag, mga ganyan. So, may intimidate yung ating public doon sa mga rules na binibigay natin when they visit the museum. Add to that, yung hindi accessible yung collection because marami tayong nilalagay ng mga boundaries, di ba? Plus, the expertise, of course, of the teachers aren't the same as ours. So, we developed this program, module-based, teaching the teachers how to use our collection for their own teaching. So, we call it amused para kasi dapat engaging. So, yan. So, yun yung isang element ng learning na ito. So, what we did, we studied several of our collections, studied their potentials, pero nag-pilot lang kami on several subjects. So, we piloted on Rizal, art appreciation, architecture, math, biology, STS, or science and technology in the society. So, that's what we did. We piloted. When we said piloted, what do we mean? We trained them. So, yung reach out, two-way siya. We trained them on how to use the museum collection. We trained them on how to be engaging. We trained them on which collections can be used for your classes. And then at the same time, o kung gagamitin, consultative siya. At the same time, they also shared with us, teka lang, paano natin gagawin kung isang buong klase yan? Kung 40, 50 students, how do we make them fit in a classroom using the modules that we develop? Or how do we manage the scheduling using the modules that we develop? Baka mag-overlap. So, yan yung mga nagiging point of discussion. So, we engaged the faculty, we taught them, we actually did workshops with them. We taught them how to be engaging faculty that would use the collection. We taught them na, oh, teka lang, merong collection na hindi nyo pwedeng hawakan. Ito lang ang pwede. These are the demo collection that we can use. Other than that, oh, hindi na, tingin-tingin na lang, iba. So, we did reach out and we embrace the faculty so that they also can embrace our museum. So, two-way siya. So, this is an example. We made them, parang, this activity you can do with your students. Pili kayo ng artwork and then make them pose like like that particular artwork, or you can make them do crafts, or you can make them do clay molds, mga ganon. Because actually, alam naman nila yung mga ganon strategy, pero hindi nila na-isip. They can actually do that inside the museum, or the museum is open to such an idea. So we reach out. That's part of museum administration. Okay, we show them around, give them a different perspective of museum by talking to them with more details about the things they can find inside. Other than that, we also strengthened our engagement with our immediate community, our De La Salle youth. So we engage them on cultural heritage advocacy. Ito yung aming commitment to Lasallian education and Lasallian mission. Yan. So ito na yan. We developed advocacy campaign, taught them how to do cultural mapping during the pandemic period. We developed a program called Ang Sabi ni Lola Musing. Musing stands for Museo, or musing, and amusing. So they are to describe whatever heritage they have in the house, and then do the hashtag ang Sabi ni Lola Musing for Museo de la Salle, something like that. You can develop something like this too for your campaign. We also strengthened our linkages network. We engage with the regional and national organizations, and slowly working on international linkages as well. So ito pa po yung tinatrabaho kasi this is where we are poor at the moment, the international linkages. As I said, we're a work in progress. So ito yung unti-unti namin kailangan i-build. But at least if you have strategic directions, you know that pag nag-check kayo ng uh, inyong mga goals, you know na meron pa kayong hindi nagagawa doon sa sinet niyo na time, like 5 years. Parang nag-check kayo doon, wait, hindi pa kami nakakaabot dito. So, kailangan pala ito yung trabahuhin. Kasi, nakasulat. You've laid out your plans and it's all black and white. So, that's what we do. Okay? So, engage ourselves and be more aware of celebrations like Museums and Galleries Month. And ano talaga to, pinaghahandaan. So this is the Nakaka-Nosebleed ng Heritage, which we did just recently. So if you notice, we have a lot of partners. In fact, we've expanded our network this time, in this activity specifically. Because we used to serve only the DLSUD or De La Salle University Las Marinas community. But with this Nakaka-Nosebleed ng Heritage, we expanded our network to De La Salle Philippines. So for the very first time, through online or virtual, we were able to engage around 2,000 youth of De La Salle all over the Philippines. Na 3,000 pang ata senior high schools for this very activity called Nakaka-Nosebleed ng Heritage. So it's a feat that we did as far as we are concerned because hindi mo naman magagather ang 3,000 students coming from all over the Philippines in one activity such as this. So, it's a success as far as our goal on linkages and mission and education is concerned. Okay, we also strengthened our media campaign, releases, and our partners for marketing efforts. So we started offering gimmicks on the mga free admissions to encourage more visitorship and to encourage more people to come and see the museum. When we did the strat plan, it's when we realized that we should be developing more audience-driven or engaging programming. So, when we craft our exhibitions, dati kasi parang, sige, gawa tayo ng exhibit, ganyan. So, when we did the strat plan, we realized na kailangan talaga natin mag-create ng program para hindi tayo masyadong taxed or pagod. Kasi if you notice, ang tao sa museum, ilan lang naman. And the budget are very limited. So, you have to make use of the very limited budget that you have. So, we developed 3 exhibition programs, Glimpses of Cavite, Museo de la Salle Highlights, and then a traveling exhibition. So, itong mga to, naka-program siya every year. Dapat may 3 kaming exhibition at the least na naka-plan siya or naka-align dito sa 3 exhibition program. And all should be audience-driven and engaging. So, nilalatag ulit namin sa papel when we do the planning on how or who to partner the exhibition, who are the target audiences, what kind of materials can we use. So, nakalatag siya, hindi siya yung imagination na, may lumang gamit, pahiram, salpak natin sa gallery, hindi siya ganun. So, curated to. We just make sure that everything has to be engaging. So, meron kami isang corner doon na hands-on. Kasi nga nasa university setting tayo, and we know how students can be. There will always be moments where they would want to touch. So, dapat meron kami parating tactile element. So, yun yung isang discovery namin. Kaya, yung mga exhibitions namin, recently, merong isang part na laging may pang audience engagement. Okay? So, this we partnered with Cavite Study Center and a local photographer which we discovered in the campus. So, Aussie Austria is one of the university clerk. But she's also been recognized internationally kasi hobby niya yung photography. So, you can tap resources in your universities and come up with exhibitions such as this. Okay, so we partnered this with Iga Ramos, the book designer, and then inspired by the Panaderia Coffee Table book of Jenny Orillos and Ami Uy. And then we partnered with Cavite Study Center and all the panaderias, or at least some panaderias in the province of Cavite. So that's them, and I share my Mr. Cesar Virata in the middle. We partnered with researchers. So Dr. Jigs Medina is an expert on moda or on fashion, Cavite fashion. So he had his dissertation on moda. So itong material niya, yun yung nilalagay namin sa exhibition. And then we would augment it with our own collection as well. So some of the exhibited pieces are in fact collections of Museo de la Salle. So these are the resources you have in the campus. Hindi kayo mahihirapan actually. You just have to be creative and you have to engage. Ito na yung mga part na the community now realizes that the museum is theirs, and so they're the ones, and then they're the ones offering help, and they're the ones offering us materials. So now, ikaw naman, bumubuhos yung mga materials na meron. You have to go back to the mission and the objective that you crafted, because not all are possible materials which you will need and which will support your mission. So pag nasa papel, madaling tumanggi, mabilis tumanggap, mabilis mag-align. So hindi tayo nahihirapan. Okay, we partnered with the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. This is a student engaging with our collection and our in-house engineer, Raymond Juanillo. So here we highlight some of our collection through an exhibition. This one specifically is an Andawag exhibition, which we did in 2019. There we did highlight some of our collections under the Project Bayani, a Southern Luzon-wide exhibition, simultaneous exhibition. So the Museo de la Salle helped in crafting this South Luzon-wide Project Bayani exhibition. So each museum in South Luzon would have a very specific exhibition that would talk about their bayani. So in our case, wala naman kaming mga national heroes. Our bayani or heroes were the Anlawage or the Carpintero, because we have furniture collection in our space. So there. We also have traveling exhibitions. So like we would partner with other museum friends. So Ayala Museum would bring in some collection or travel exhibitions. Sometimes embassies would bring in exhibitions also. So we have to be open to this kind of exhibitions too, or to this kinds of programs too, because we need to be upbeat and updated. Lalo na tayo, we are in the academic community. We continued on with our workshops and art talks and heritage talks. So, yung mga traditional, that's what we do most of all, especially during the summer, like pastillas wrapper making. This girl, most of the time when we hear pastillas wrapper making, we associate it with Bulacan. This lady here, she's graduate of, or at this time, during this time, she was still a student of the graphics management from one of our departments. And her thesis was on digitizing the pastillas wrapper. So, again, another resource we had in the campus. So, her professor advisor told us about her thesis, because they thought it's very much appropriate also, or we might be interested. And really, we were. So what she did a workshop with us on digitizing the pastillas wrapper kasi mas madaling i-replicate. So yan yung tinuro niya. So again, resources plus new medium, diba? So pwede mo siyang gamitin sa mga programs mo. Still, it's promoting and safeguarding heritage. So this is again a muse with one of our faculty engaging our students inside our space. So, to close, as I've said a while ago, Museo de la Salle remains to be a work in progress. Marami pa kami dapat gawin. And since we started our strat planning, the good thing about it is we've laid out the foundations, we've charted our directions, it's helping us, and we committed to the mission. We believe in the vision of a nation with the youth that holds a profound regard for nationhood. So my advice is, if you may also want to review the university mission where you belong to, and check if your museum's vision is aligned to that. But if you're planning to put up your own museum too, you check again the mission, the overall mission of your institutions, and find there a path, a link where your museum can anchor, and from there you can build. So there, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Okay, thank you so much, Cecile. That's a very inspiring talk. I hope our participants from the HEIs are inspired by your examples and presentation. So, Cecile, are you okay for Q&A?
Hello. Yes, yes,
Hello.
yes. Yes, hello. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. So I'll
Thank you.
just we have some questions on the chat box. So there's a reaction from Vesper Sierras. Yesterday we discussed about how museums, university museums, could be unique and distinct, not when they are forwarding, for instance, establishing their own. No, so this is a very interesting reaction from Vesper. So he said you share the same challenge with the Dapitan City, as a
Mm-hmm.
shrine city already has a local museum of Dr. Jose Rizal. Thus, how can we make our planned university museum relevant, aligned to the local museum, but uniquely the universities? So
Yeah.
nawiwindang daw
Oo nga.
dito. So how do you...
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, I read it too, and I was thinking, oo nga naman, paano nga ba talaga? I think the first that the university must do, in this case po, tama ba? Si Vespers po ba ay nasa university?
Yeah, I think Jose Rizal something university,
Okay.
also an HEI.
HEI. So I think the strategy po that can be done in this case is for the university to reach out to the LGU, and then probably review also again the mission of the university in relation to its immediate community. Kasi kami po, specifically in the La Salle University, Dasmariñas, yan din minsan yung question namin. Kasi we also heard questions or comments from other people, lalo na when we were starting a museum. Meron kasi tayong parang medyo may pagka tawag mo may claim tayo to our place, 'di ba? So may yung mga
Yeah.
taga Dasmariñeño, or say like that, mga taga Dasmariñas, they would say, hindi naman yan wala naman diyang representation of Dasmariñeño. So ganon. And it took us a while to, or not even Caviteño for that matter. Narinig namin yan many times in our museum because many of the collections inside our museum are really from people from other places, mostly nga Kapampangan. Because a lot of our furniture pieces have been donated by people from Lasalians, from Pampanga. So very few are really from the province of Cavite. So paano mo isi-situate yung sarili mo given these types of comments? So it took us a while before we were able to address such a parang glaring comment. Parang nakusan nga ba kami nakalugar? Dito sa lugar na to, alien na naman ba ang museo? Parang ganyan. So in the case, in relation to the question of Vespers, ito kung hindi mo pa na-establish yung museum, na-establish na pala yung museum, I think the thing is we really have to go back to the mission of the university. Meron bang part ng mission ng university that also responds to the, or is related to the community where it belongs to. Baka sakaling that part, pwede kayong mag-weave ng ng something, or be able to find something there that can connect, and from there align. Or if not, create a program probably that will answer or respond to the community para you can partner with the LGU Museum. So parang ganun po. Kasi lalo na sa kagaya namin, naunang na-establish yung museum bago siya ma-recognize bago ma-recognize yung role niya or potential role niya in the city. So ngayon, the city recognizes the Museo, our museum, as something that promotes national, hindi Las Marinas. Ganyan. So, anong role ng museum in relation to the LGU national? Kaya nyo rin, kaya natin mag-create ng programa para sa local. So, doon tayo pwedeng bumawi. So, that for me is how it can be done.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Cecil. I think there's a great emphasis on local, connecting to the national. But for me kasi, I would rather work in local museums, no, to highlight the collection, to highlight the
Yes.
place, to highlight the people, no, locally. Kasi kailangan na natin, beef up the local museums, especially in regional areas.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
In relation to that question, I like what you said when you mentioned make your museums relevant in the university. No, that's to me talagang ito yung mantra natin as museum workers. So you have to make a position, no, for our participants that you really have to make that your museums are relevant, that your collections are relevant because they are part of this, complementary pedagogy
Right.
as a learning tool, no, for your students and your faculty, no. So like what Cecil said, that once they understood, your university understood that museums are important, then all things will come along, no, yung funding nyo, yung support and everything.
Yes, I
Okay,
agree.
so in relation to that, yeah, there's another anonymous attendee question din niya, Cecil. So in your opinion, given the challenges, for instance, in the reduction of manpower, budget cut, even the threat to close the museums, no,
Yes,
brought by the
exactly.
pandemic, especially
Yes.
to HEIs, what could be the reason why an HEI should prioritize the establishment of a museum?
Well, truth is, if we're talking of the present right now, pandemic scenario, um, I think to say that the establishment of the museum, let's be real, the establishment of the prioritization in establishing a museum at this time of the pandemic, I think it will really be put on hold. Realistically. Kasi yun yung scenario natin at the moment, lalo na sa HEIs. Pero it doesn't mean that hindi naman natin sinasabing hindi na establish. We're just saying it will be put on hold. So in the meantime that it will be put on hold, we have to continuously advocate and assert why it should be important. Lalo na these types of webinars are very inspiring and will really help us all in defending our case, strengthening our advocacies on the whys of we must build um, museums, especially in the university. Ang lagi ko lang din sinasabi, when we build museums in the university, we really have to be clear what our role is in the university and who are our target audiences are. So yung relevance talaga ng pag-exist, yan yung I think that will defend our case every time we position ourselves on the whys we must exist. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Cecil. Just a follow up earlier from Tomas Felipe Leonor. No? So, reaction to Sir Vesper. I was part of the team that did the Rizal Museum in Dapitan around 2015 to 2016. There are other aspects of Rizal's life in Dapitan na hindi masyado napagtutuunan ng pansin doon sa shrine. Maybe that's the focus of the university to fulfill those gaps. No? So
That's
that's a good
nice.
suggestion for you, Sir Vesper. No? Okay, Ma'am Vesper is a
Collaboration.
she. Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Vesper, for that one. So I hope to meet you, no, in one of our visits, hopefully in your area. Okay, so there's a question about from Rap Nobleza. So very inspiring, Ma'am Cecile. May we know more about the applicability of De La Salle DASMA with public SUCs?
Bakit naman hindi? Kasi parang hindi naman unique actually experience ng Museo de la Salle. So, kanina SUCs is the state view, right? Tama po ba? So ang case po kasi ng Museo de la Salle, I think pwede naman po siyang model even for all HEIs for that matter. Pwede siyang model. I'm sure may iba pang model din na ideal. Um, so to share with you, kanina you were talking about organizational structure during the talk of Sir Dannie. So ang organizational structure po ng Museo de la Salle, we have a separate board, and I'm sure this is not unique to us. We have a separate board, apart from the board of that of the university. The president of the university sits as the board of the museo. But in cases na yung president is fully tied up with work or maybe got other priorities or interests, he can appoint someone to sit in the as the board. So the idea of having a separate board is you have another group of think tank to work with you. Kasi you can actually determine the qualifications of your board. They don't have to be members of the universities. They can be external people with other expertise. So siguro yung model na to, bakit hindi, pwede naman siyang maging applicable to other institutions. So I think we can get in touch on this if you need to know more about it.
Yeah, it's important to have shared goals kasi when you work in the
Right.
museum. No?
Mm-mm.
If you have like-minded people on board, then
Exactly.
I'm sure. Okay, thank you, Cecile. There's another question from YouTube. Itong tanong niya. Were consultation ever made with community and students when establishing or coming up with museum activities and projects? So how do you make sure that these projects will be relevant to the community and it will be well received?
Yeah.
Okay, from you.
Uh, when we started with the museum, oh, siguro mga 5, 6 years when we started operating around 2000, most of the activities were parang imposed. So kami yung nag-iisip, tapos ganyan, tapos pinipilan sa community, ganyan. And then we would be disappointed that uh, very few visitors would come in. In fact, sasabihin mo na sa mga tao, no, the visit may food, come, and ganyan. Tapos parang, ba't ang konti pa din? And then we would invite people or classes to come, force them to come, yan, require them to come, ganyan. Still, parang ano ba naman, bakit ang hirap? Bakit ang hirap imbita? And then we realized, hindi kami relevant, hindi kami responsive to the needs of the academy. So what we did, yun na nga, we started reaching out. In fact, what we did, we studied syllabus. We gathered syllabus which we think are relevant to the museum and which we think we can respond to, and studied syllabus, literally studied syllabus, and then find somewhere in the syllabus where we can actually connect or respond. And then created something based on that syllabus, consulted teachers, and to ask them, pwede bang sumingit ang museo dito? Mag-create kami ng something, maybe an event, maybe a regular program for you, and then require classes and then participate. So we have regular programmings other than exhibition. So yung exhibition namin, pinaplat namin. Like this year, we will partner with architecture. And so we did the Anbawagi, so infant 19. Next year, we will partner with Bio. So we did another exhibition for Ciento. So highlighting collections of the biology department in relation to Philippine flora and fauna. And then we have a regular program which we are partnering with Filipino or Kagawaran ng Filipino at Panitikan. We crafted a program called Poesia. So this is promoting Philippine literature. And every year yan, ginagawa na. Nakaplat na yun, nakalagay na sa syllabus nila. We have a regular program for tourism. Nakakraft na rin yun, yung mga tourism, OJTs, and heritage classes. Nakaplat na sa syllabus nila. We have architecture courses na nakaplat na rin sa syllabus. It took us many years. Pero yun yung solution for us to be able, for us to become relevant in the university. We really have to do our part in researching and reaching out.
Yes, exactly. Kasi some of our HEIs are, they feel that they are daunted how to push further kasi iba-iba yung mga disciplines, iba-iba yung mga departments. So how do you make things or the museum relevant? You partner with
Yes.
them para you can craft an activity with them, a small exhibition about the
Yes.
collections.
Yeah.
So that's
Isang ano
really
lang naman, ma'am
awesome.
eh. Like in syllabus po, kasi marami naman yun. Isang part lang doon kasi ang hirap, like kagami ko, honestly, the staff of Museo is just four. Imagine, just four people. So, to be studying loads of syllabus is really too much. So, pipili ka lang. Yung kaya mo lang, di ba? Yung workable lang. You cannot take in too much naman. Pero ang mangyayari kasi, pag just, you get successful in one or two, bubuhos sila. And that
Correct.
will be less problem for you.
Yes. In one of our many ocular visits, we will do this in technique level 3. When we visit museum, no, aside from of course doing cleaning,
Yeah.
la bandera work, view and all that, the other question that we ask is what does your community have? No, meron bang mga wood carving communities? May basket or weaving ba dyan na you can connect your objects
Right.
to the community of weavers, no? So you can set up an exhibition, no? So in Museo Kordilyera, we have done that in the previous years, like how to read museum artifacts, like how to make sense of, for instance, bulol or the
Yeah.
anthropomorphic carvings, our basketry. We invited experts on weaving using our collections, and then we also tap the weavers not to weave inside the museums. No? So you can actually engage aside from within the university. You can also go outside, no, revisit your communities na merong mga artisans. There are crafts that are there that you can actually engage them for your museum activities.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a comment here from Nina Zamora. Very inspiring for our teacher education institution to have Museo. So integration of Museo in the syllabus, really amazing.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I will take one last question, Cecile, from
Mm-hmm.
Alex de Los Santos. Alex, are you from, where is Alex from? From Antique, no? State University. Okay. So the question, how is your program like? How many exhibitions do you prepare per
Person.
semester and how much time is spent for preparation of changing exhibitions?
Ito is this portion or this question has something to do also with resources. Kasi as administrators, we have our dreams, we have our plans, but you have to match it with realities, with our own reality. So resources management kasama talaga dyan. So in our case, we have 3 exhibition programs every year. So I mentioned it to you, yung the Glimpses of Cavite, which talks about, ito yung isang program that we did, the Glimpses of Cavite. Balik ko dun sa question ni LGU and university. We created an exhibition program about Cavite kasi we have no Cavite collection actually, but we can have something that supports or will promote the community. So we created this Mintos of Cavite exhibition program. So eto sa exhibit na to, we would partner with researchers, with the local community, borrow materials, or seek resource persons para i-promote yung province. So ganyan. So naka-line up yung tatlong exhibitions. Glimpses of Cavite, so dapat merong isa doon. We have Museo de la San highlights, dapat may isa. Merong traveling exhibition na isa. So ganyan namin siya ginagawa. But may mga cases kami that budgets are really limited kasi like there would be exhibitions na medyo mas mahal kesa dun sa isa, yung mga ganon. So we would have at least 2, 1 per semester because that is what's manageable for us in terms of manpower and in terms of resources also. On how long each exhibit is done, ang pagpuput up kasi ng exhibit, hindi lang yung sa pag-i-install itself, may research factor. So meron kami mga exhibitions na highly technical or very much well-researched. So it would take us like 3-4 months. Meron pa nga iba 6 months in the making kasi may research factor. Pero the installing the exhibition, nandun na yung medyo mabilis kapag nailatag mo na lahat. Kung gaano siguro on the average, when we put up exhibition na available na lahat ng material, siguro mga isang buwan, mga ganun, mga at the least, at the least. So kapag when we plan exhibition, may space na or may gap of 2 to 3 months from the last exhibition to the next. So, yun yung mga, sa case po namin, sa case namin sa Museo de la Salle.
Yeah. For Museo Kordilyera, we mounted 3 exhibitions, no? So the plan
In a
is to
year.
have a exhibition every year. So medyo maduguto, no? The
Madugo, yeah.
preparations would take a year before we can mount a full exhibition. Like you said, same with the research, no? Kailangan pagtuunan mo ng pansin yung research. But in the case of Museo Kordilyera, we have faculty who have research in the Kordilyera. So sometimes we base the exhibition based on
Right.
the research. Like the first one, we had tattoo exhibition. The second one, we had Feast of Merit, feasting in the Cordillera, and now we have textile exhibitions. All of this are actually based on research.
Yes.
The preparations, of course, you have to do your exhibition plan, medyo matagal, no?
Yes.
Then you have to do an object list kung ano yung mga available sa museum mo na pwede mong i-exhibit, and then if not, you have to look for private individuals who have this collection who are willing to share or donate these artifacts to the museum. Then you have the setting up of the exhibition, no? So usually isang buwan yung nilalaan namin. Of course, kasama mo mga karpintero, lahat ng mga
Right.
mount dyan. So preparation-wise is 1 year, and the exhibition will run for another year. Then, of course, due to popular demand, we extend the exhibition for another year. So within the year, we also come up with collateral activities, which also includes publication, no? So lahat ng exhibition ng Museo Kordilyera may kasamang monographs or book publication, which again, doubling din yun, another 6 months to another year, no? To just come up with the publication kasi madugo yung proseso. Okay, so just to give you an idea how these are done. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we don't have questions, so we have very good feedback from our participants, Cecile,
Thank you.
for the presentation. Okay, so if you don't have questions, we would like to thank Cecile for the time this morning, for giving us a very inspiring example, no, from Museo de la Salle. No?
Thank you too.
Okay, so thank you, Cecile. And then we thank Sir Dannie, also, who's there with us kanina, and then kay Ma'am Cecile for their time and energy for inspiring our participants. And then we will have a talk next week. First, on March 4 and 5, we have Boots Herrera, who will talk about developing a collections policy. Then we have Peter Natividad, who will talk about collections management part 2 on condition reporting. Then we have from the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, si Miss Cecile Rojas, will talk about conservation of museum artifacts. Okay, so if you want to get a certificate of completion for today's webinar, please click the link below, and you will get automatic generated certificates for this webinar. So again, we thank Sir Dannie. Thank you so much. Ma'am Cecile, thank you so much for participating in our webinar this morning. So thank you very much, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Mamikin?
Don, wala ka music.
Nawala tayo? Nawala ako eh. Ganun.
Oh,
Di
nawala
ba
ka.
naputol?
Saan music ko, Nay? Di
Di
mo
ba
pa
naputol?
flinas yung poster? Oh, yung
Nawala ako
music
dun sa
mo
Zoom.
sa...
Saan ako dyan, ma'am?
Thank you so much, Don and MA staff for participating na. See you all next week. Have a good weekend. Kain na, lunch dito. Bye-bye.